This is your friendly neighborhood author, Jonathan, and you are listening to Season 4 of the Floor Rejects podcast, The Wells House Phenomenon. Hi there, welcome back. Welcome to my greasy life. If you're just tuning in, we are covering chapter 20 of the Wells House Phenomenon this week. If you're watching this, which I know you're probably not, but if you are, I did cut my hair. Was it a mistake? Yes. Will I do it again? Yes. Last week we had Warren and Thomas just kind of answering another series of questions. It's a way to move the story along. It was a way to get more answers about how exactly things might go down, why they go down the way that they are, and why it is that Warren can't just leave. Like why Thomas can't just tell him what's going on and he leave. So without further ado, without stretching this intro out, let's get into chapter 20. Right? Yeah, 20. Chapter 20. Shock.
God, you have a tight little body.
Warren hears as he opens his eyes.
Shut up, tight little body,
He mutters, rolling over and smiling into Edward's warm skin without opening his eyes. He hears the man laugh, and again they complete their morning ritual, kissing and toying with each other as the room seems to heat up inexplicably. Eventually Edward leaves, still not keen on showering in the bathroom 10 feet from him, and Warren shrugs it off, dressing for the day, having a contentious breakfast with the family, and deciding he would spend his day out and about as long as the truck would allow him. He ignored Edward's warnings about the truck having radiator damage, something about the core support, and grabs his wallet and cigarettes before running out to the barn, his arms freshly wrapped with new salve. As the gates to the property open for him, his eyes begin to water, his skull feeling somehow tighter, as if his scalp was shrinking as he passed through the opening and swung the old behemoth out onto the road. He meanders through the back roads, taking his time without using his GPS, enjoying the air that smelled somehow sweeter, fresher than the air in the manor. Eventually he finds his way into town, his head now pounding. He pulls into a corner pharmacy, drawing the truck up and into a spot. When he walks in, he freaks out for a moment at all the new, unfamiliar faces around him. He shakes it off, telling himself he was crazy, and walks to the back of the store to find some aspirin. He grabs the biggest box and a bottle of tea from the cooler and heads up to the front to pay. He decides his next stop would be the dealership for a new car, but realizes he has no paperwork for the old Jeep, so he makes a note to check the mail and passes the lot up. He continues down the road, ending up in the town square where his head begins to pulse in pain. He pulls over, popping 3 tablets into his mouth and swallowing them down with the cold, sweet, refreshing tea. He looks around, spotting a few small shops of interest. First, he heads to a small clothing shop that appeared to mostly sell athletic wear, and after browsing and grabbing a few pairs of shorts, he tosses the bag in his truck and tries the shop next door, a shop full of little curiosities. He walks in, and the grizzled old man behind the counter looks up at him, smiling kindly from a thick white beard.
What can I help you find, young man?
He asks, standing up and rolling his neck.
Nothing in particular, just looking for things to freshen up my new place.
Warren says. When the man asked him where he had moved to and where from, Bob, Warren found his name out during the conversation, was confused.
You mean a darn lane, right? All that's at the end of Adams Street is a rotted old shell.
Bob asks, and Warren shakes his head, reiterating that the house where he was where he knew it was. Bob shakes his head as Warren picks up an old mid-century lamp with 2 cone-shaped facets. He smiles, remembering one his grandfather had when he was really young, and his family had still lived in a smaller mansion in town. Then he spots a massive mirror, its frame carved in an ornate pattern wrapped around itself in vines and flowers and snakes. He smiles at it. The thing is wider than his wingspan. He turns to Bob.
I'll take this lamp and the mirror,
he says, and Bob laughs.
Son, that mirror is $3,000. It's a hand-carved, French-imported mirror from the late 19th century. I got it at an auction, but I think it's probably a little too rich for your blood. Now, if you have some idea of...
Warren holds up a hand. I'll take it, he says again, flicking his card out to Bob, who swipes it with a bit of reluctance. The machine beeps and lights up green.
I'll be damned. You want me to deliver it?
The old man offers.
Just help me get it out to the truck.
Warren says, and together they get it out, tied down securely. As Warren thanks Bob and turns to put his lamp in the cab, his head feels almost like it's ripping apart, the aspirin doing no good. He leans on the truck, his vision slowly fading. In the blackness, he can see glimpses, and he can see leathery wings flapping towards him. As his vision grows worse, and he has to feel his way into the truck, he can see arms flying, fists landing, and he can almost hear it, although it's actually the pounding of blood in his ears. The visions, the images of terror and pain throw him, and he feels his way to a prone position on the seat as he sees in his mind's eye a last image of Thomas, clear as day, laying on the floor of the foyer, his eyes smiling as his body jolts from the silent thud of punch after punch hitting his body. Warren shakes his head, rubbing his face in the dirty tweed fiber of the truck as light permeates his vision again. He leans up in time to find his hands covered in blood, and when he flips down the visor, he can see blood dripping from his ears. He wipes at it, rubbing the sticky red liquid from the burgundy seats, and throws the vehicle in drive, hoping he can get home before it gets any worse. He drives quickly and carefully back, praying the mirror doesn't break. When he arrives, he can feel an almost immediately relief at the entrance, as if he had driven into a cloud of anesthetic. He cleans himself up as best he can outside, hoping no one saw him as he made a streak through the front door into his room, stumbling into the stark, bright white bathroom. He throws his shirt over his head, running water in the sink and splashing his face, wiping at his neck as he turns the water in the sink a bright pink. He dries himself off, pulling on a new, fresh shirt as he steps out into the hall. When he gets back out to the truck, he finds Edward standing there looking at the mirror.
Mother will be pissed,
he says, with a smile, pulling Warren into a sweaty embrace. Warren laughs.
Why? It's technically my house. I just wanted something I like in there. Help me get it inside.
Warren says, and Edward positions himself behind it as Warren tilts it back. The larger man's massive arms reach out, grabbing the entire thing and lifting it up over the bedside. He carries it in, the thing blocking his whole body as he side shuffles it into the house. Warren gets inside just as he leans it against the wall, stepping back and admiring it.
You're even hotter in the mirror,
Warren says, looking over at Edward, who beams in pride, flexing and twisting in the surface. Warren has the faintest memory of Lila in that mirror, but just as the memory solidifies, it fades again, falling from his mind as Edward pins him against the wall, kissing him gently and running his arms up it. Warren smiles into the kiss, pushing back and hooking a leg into Edward's, pulling him close enough to bump chests.
So are you.
Edward hums into Warren's ear. Just as they lean back towards each other, someone clears their throat nearby. The two spin apart as they spot Thomas peeking from around the sitting room door frame, leaning on an old wooden crutch.
Gross,
he murmurs, with a half-hearted smile. Warren blushes, but Edward growls, leaning towards his brother as if to grab him, but Warren pulls him back. He warns, his eyes scolding Edward. The man slinks back, and Thomas smiles gratefully as he limps towards the kitchen away from them.
Down, boy,
Warren says, walking into the kitchen behind Thomas to help get dinner out on the table quicker. It was quick, mostly because Edward was almost radiating his aggression towards his brother who had made one silly comment. Warren practically had to drag his bedfellow into his quarters afterwards.
You have to calm down, Eddie. He's not a threat to you. He's your brother,
Warren says, leaning back on the edge of his bed, his arms crossed. Edward walks over to him, pulling his arms apart and leaning down.
I know he's not a threat. I just refuse to let him dampen this thing we're doing,
he says, which triggers another thought in Warren's brain.
What are we doing, Edward? Are we just having fun? Are we dating? Are you sticking around? No pressure. I've just been wondering for a little while.
Warren asks, and Edward smiles.
We are whatever you want us to be. I'll be here as long as you allow me to be,
he says. Warren has to stifle a shiver of pleasure at the submission.
Can we just be dating? Like normal people? I know this is the last thing from normal, but I just kind of want to lock you down,
Warren says. Edward kisses his hands and nods.
Now, since we're locking this down, I think we celebrate,
Edward says, and he scoops Warren up under his arms, tossing him onto the bed. He sails through the air, laughing as he bounces down into a pile of pillows. Edward rolls up onto the crinkling fabric, his shirt already half off. He tosses it to the side, Warren mirroring him as their lips smash together in a fervor of passion spurred on by Edward's aggression towards his brother and Warren's thrill at having commitment after living so long without it.
Come here.
Edward groans, pulling Warren closer, his eyes glittering darkly as they twist and writhe, clutching at each other's skin, the room warming and stirring the deepest desires in Warren's psyche. He tugs at his lover's tight denim, smiling against Edward's cheek as he leans down chest to chest and struggles out of his pants. His hulking pecs bounce as he leans back up, running his hands through his hair while he grins down at the man he has pinned between his legs.
Your turn.
He says, unbuttoning Warren's shorts with a flick and ripping them down, leaving Warren bare in the dark room. Edward sinks down, his mouth wrapping around Warren, who immediately balls his sheets up in his hands, groaning and pulling away from the bed, involuntarily thrusting into Edward's mouth. In between motions, Edward is moaning, his throat vibrating around Warren and sending him into fits.
Eddie,
Warren breathlessly murmurs into a pillow pressed against his face. Edward stops, his warm breath cooling Warren's dripping member as he holds in position, looking up to see Warren.
you're gonna send me over the edge before I even get a chance to get at you.
Warren says, and Edward gets an even more focused, sly look on his face. He rears up, blocking out the light from the room.
How about we really take this up a notch?
Edward says, and Warren, unsure of what he means, but so swept up in the moment, nods without question. Edward hums, spitting into his hand insouciantly, sliding it deftly up his backside. Warren's mouth forms a small O of surprise, shock setting in as Edward lifts himself up on his thighs, his massive body leaning forward on one arm as he positions himself. He leans down close, his nose an inch from Warren's.
Tell me you want me.
Edward growls, and Warren nods hurriedly.
I do. I want you. Bad.
Warren says in a voice so low it shocks him, and Edward bears down, his face contorting as Warren yelps at the pure sublimity of the feeling of Edward sliding down on him. As Edward slowly rolls back onto Warren's lap, his smaller partner begins to dig his nails into his palms to stop himself from coming in an instant. Edward smiles down at him as he comes to rest at the base of Warren's throbbing cock.
Wow, Mr. Wells, you did really want this.
Edward says with a laugh, flexing his ass. Warren, so overwhelmed by the sensation, bites his own lip so hard he can taste blood. Edward slowly begins to rise and fall, riding Warren deftly. Warren reaches back, the feeling of his lover's bristly haunches on his sensitive shaft and palms causing his mind to narrow. He crunches up, sliding his hands up to Edward's bouncing chest, marveling at it as Edward grinds down into him. He slips a nipple into his mouth, sucking at Edward, and he grasps the back of his head as he pulls him closer, crying out, and he receives a small nibble at his hard bud.
You're big. Warren, I think you're going to make me come.
Edward says raggedly after a few minutes of deep strokes into his belly. Warren pulls back, seeing black spots as he looks up into Edward's burning stare.
Do it, Edward,
he says, and Edward laughs, again tightening himself around his lover, who mews.
You first,
he says, accelerating, bouncing quickly, his muscles still tensed around Warren's dick. Warren, his mind no longer able to hold off his impending orgasm, grabs Edward's face roughly and pulls him down hard, his ass coming to rest on Warren, who sinks unthinkably deeper into his partner, who's baying from the penetration. Their lips meet as Warren allows himself to climax as intensely as he could remember, their teeth gnashing as a warm, wet sensation splatters across his chest, and Edward hisses into his mouth. Warren bucks uncontrollably up against Edward, who cries out with each push, his body shaking. He holds Warren to his chest as the convulsions in their bodies stop.
Fucking Christ.
Warren moans into the hairy skin at his mouth. He can feel Edward laugh.
I've told you before. He has nothing to do with me.
Edward says, sliding up and allowing Warren to slip out of him. Warren yelps. Edward sibilates at the emptiness. He hops up, sidestepping like a cowboy to grab a towel, which he wipes Warren up with before himself. Then he crawls up into the bed, pressing his back to Warren's chest, who's already almost asleep, and before he can even say goodnight, he is asleep. When he opens his eyes, Edward is smiling at him already. Warren doesn't even blink, his mind now accustomed to the transition.
What do you say we ride around again, lover?
He asks suggestively, and Warren smiles convincingly.
Not yet, you animal. I have to recover.
Warren lies, and Edward shrugs happily and rolls over, his eyes already shut. Warren waits a while before getting up confidently, dressing and sneaking towards the door.
Tell my brother hello, Warren.
Warren hears as the door clicks open. He turns and Edward smiles at him kindly, a strange look on his face, like a blessing. Warren, in shock, turns and shuts the door, bolting from the house without a thought, scared he wouldn't make it to Thomas before Edward did. Friends, this is not my finest hour. My finest episode, I will tell you. I'm sorry for that. I wrote this chapter with the intent of it being a beautiful expression of gay sex, which it is. My reading did not do it justice, I'll be honest with you. There's going to be lots of cuts because I can't be focused today. Let me explain to you why. It's a very stupid reason, okay? I ordered these things called SwitchBots. They go on your curtain rod, they open your curtains for you automatically. I had to wait a few days for them to get here. They finally got here, and I spent like 2.5 hours on a 15-foot ladder sweating my ass off trying to get these stupid things to work. And I finally got them to work, only to find out that they wouldn't work with my Alexa unless I bought another $40 device to hub it all together, which won't get here till Friday. So I've got dumber curtains because I can't even open them regularly for several days. On top of that, my cat has decided now is the time that he would like to scream. Now is the time he would like to sing the song of his people. And I'll also be honest, this microphone is starting to slowly die. So I'm not sure how good the audio is going to sound, but I digress. Let's talk about this chapter. They have sex, right? Full on penetrative, I guess as straight as you can get straight related sex. But it's while Warren is awake. So we don't really have to worry about that. But let's talk about what happens at a couple of things. Number one, Edward is in the mirror. There's not an issue. We can tell that there's some issues with mirrors because Lila appeared in one and briefly was her demon self. That scared Warren, but now he, of course, doesn't remember it. We've also got this thing that she has where she won't go into the bathroom, but remember that the bathroom is all white, pretty modern, and it's covered in mirrors, which is why she won't go in there. I don't know if I've stated that explicitly, but that's why she won't go in there, is because it's all mirrors. We'll get into that later, but suffice to say, the mirrors play an important part. But they can camouflage themselves in front of mirrors, so I thought it would be a fun thing to bring the mirror into the house, have them walking around in front of it, and then at some point Warren's going to catch a glimpse he shouldn't have, and it's going to be scary. Let's also talk about the very end of the chapter where Warren is leaving the room and Edward says, "Tell my brother hello." I find that extremely interesting. I think it's fun. I think it's scary. I think that it's good that Warren's immediate reaction is to run out and try and find Thomas because he thinks Edward is going to look for him. But let me tell you why I wrote that. Because originally, the story was just going to kind of be like Warren against Edward and Lila, and Thomas just being there to kind of support him along the journey. But then I thought, wouldn't it be more interesting, maybe a little more complicated, if Edward was aware of what was going on? If Edward played himself as maybe not the villain, if he was the hero, or at least presented himself as a hero, right? Is that going to complicate how things shake out as far as Thomas and Edward and Warren all in a weird incestuous throuple? Maybe. Yes, it will. So we have to figure that out. But I think that's fun. I'd also like to address that we're willingly suspending disbelief that a big, giant muscle man can eat a huge dinner and then immediately bottom. We're going to suspend our disbelief on that one. Is it far-fetched? Yes. But is it possible? We're going to say yes, and we're going to suspend our disbelief and just say that that's okay. It's just something I couldn't not say something about it because I really was like, do I put a douching scene in this book? Do I put a demon douching scene? No, I'm not going to do that. Do I? I don't know. So I didn't. Also, if you read, like if you go to the YouTube channel, not so that you have to watch me, but so that you can actually read what I'm reading to you instead of listening to my voice read it, because my voice is not particularly voice actory, but I can't afford to have a voice actor read every single chapter. It's not possible. Um, or I would, trust me, I would just never be in front of the camera or in front of my microphone, but it's not an option. Um, God, could you imagine if I could just have someone read it for me? Anyway, I think that if you read it, it has a different effect than listening to me try to, like, not hurriedly, but get through it without stumbling. Because I'm not a professional voice actor, I'm not a professional narrator. I can't, that's just not a skill set that I have yet. But some things that I do like about this chapter is the diversity of language, that there's not as many repeat words as I have been guilty of in the past. But remember, this is a first draft. This is not like the end all be all of this story. Nothing can change once I've read it to you. I like that it's moving faster. It's, cycling through days faster, or at least with less words. The chapters are getting shorter as the day cycles are shorter. I like that Warren goes out into the town and kind of has this adverse reaction to being away. I think that's interesting. I think that's fun, funky, fresh. I just had a hiccup. It's different. I think we're diversifying, and I think Warren as a character needs a little bit of that to help his development and to help his waking mind sort of separate itself from what's changing and what's not changing. So I find that interesting. I also think we need to revisit a little bit more. We need to revisit the mirror. We need to revisit the Jeep. We need to take care of that. That'll be in the next chapter. We're going to see something interesting play out with that. Insurance is not interesting, but I do think that this could definitely present some interesting challenges to Warren's daytime psyche, his daytime conception of reality. Something else we need to revisit: Grandpa's ghost. Where the hell has he been? Sure, he could be gone for a few chapters and it's not a big deal, but we do need to bring him back and resolve his storyline before we move too much further. So that's what I've been into this week. I'll update you next week when it comes to the Switchbot Saga, which is what I'm going to be calling my next novel. Just kidding, but not kidding, because these things were not cheap. They were $100 a piece for little robots that open the curtains, and I wanted them so bad. Oh, I wanted them so bad, and I should have known better. They work, don't get me wrong. Like this curtain on my door, if I clicked the button on my phone and it was on this one, the curtain would just slowly open or slowly close. Very cool, very good for my plants, which is kind of what I wanted them for, so that the curtains could open and close autonomously during the day and give my plants all the sunlight they could get while simultaneously making it look like someone is home, because they'll close if the light is dim enough. But it's just the way it is. It's just the way that I am. I'll update you on it next week, but I'm gonna go because it's already 9 o'clock at night. I still have to edit all this, and I only have one cigarette left, and I'm feeling emotional about that. So I'm gonna go. But I appreciate you listening, watching, giving me your attention, your thoughts, your feedback. If you want to tweet me or email me, I've said it once, I'll say it again, at thefloorrejects@gmail.com, or just at thefloorrejects on Twitter or Tumblr. You can find me there, and let me know what you think, and let's be best friends. At this point, I'm willing to be best friends. If you're, honestly, hear me out. If you're someone who has been here with me since the beginning, or you're one of those people, because I know there's a few people who have listened to every single episode or almost every single episode of either a single season or all of the seasons, will you let me know? I would kind of like to know. I would like to get to know some people who have listened to things that I've done and written and could give me feedback. Not like a let me know and I'll just read your message and not respond. I'll respond. I'm not scared. What am I doing? Insurance work? I hate that. I'll respond. I'm not scared. Message me. Let me know. Also, like, tell a friend, tell 2 friends, tell 3 friends. Only if they're queer or like a super cool straight person. Don't tell any like super straights, and don't tell any like, don't. I don't want to say don't tell any straight white twinks, but or oh god, a straight white twink. Don't tell the white twinks. I guess tell them, but only if they're nice. Don't tell the mean ones, and tell them not to watch the videos because you can see my hairline, and I'm looking at it and it's not great. Anyway. I appreciate you being here. You know that I do. I say it every week, but I'll say it again. I appreciate it. I truly do. Stay safe. Black Lives Matter. Also, this week, do a little research into what's been happening as far as not only increased hate crimes against Asian American people, but also what just recently happened. I believe it was Atlanta. It was a shooting that left, I think, 8 people dead. That was not only racially motivated, but sexually motivated, it seems like, as well. Do some research into that because it was a, let's say it all together, friends of all genders and non-genders. It was a white man who was apprehended, what? Peacefully. So maybe this week I'll link some resources as far as the shooting that's been happening there, and also like some resources on increased violence towards Asian Americans, especially right now. But that's all I'll say. I'll be back next week. I'm always back next week. I keep doing this even though I don't think very many people are listening, and that's okay. I'll be back next week. Okay, let me get this remote going. Okay, you ready? Okay. Bye.